Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of Virginia Beach City Public Schools Family Connection, One Pill Can Kill. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Jen McGowan, and I'm the coordinator of school and community partnerships, and I work in the Office of Family and Community Engagement here at Virginia Beach Schools. I'll be your moderator this evening. Before we start the presentation, let's meet our panelists. Nate French, educator, Virginia Beach Department of Human Services.
Hello, everybody.
Sergeant Dan Fogarty, Virginia Beach Police Department.
Hi, everyone. Apologize that you can't see my video.
Salo Ortiz, founder and CEO of Life Change Institute.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Vivian Aliba, Prevention Educator 2, Virginia Beach Department of Human Services.
Hello, everyone.
Heidi Sawala, Coordinator of Health Services for Virginia Beach City Public Schools.
Good evening.
Casey Conger, Coordinator of Health and Physical Education for Virginia Beach City Public Schools.
Good evening, everyone.
And finally, Dr. Adman Alexander, Director of the Office of Family and Community Engagement.
Good evening, everyone.
And now I'll turn the presentation over to Nate French with the Virginia Beach Department of Human Services.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So we're going to learn a little bit about fentanyl. So we'll go ahead and start here on the next slide. One more, please. Okay. So fentanyl, just to break it down, kind of what is it? So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, and that synthetic means it's made in a lab to mimic a real thing. And that real thing it's trying to mimic is something like morphine. Okay, and so morphine comes from the poppy plant, and at a very specific time, right when they're about to bloom, it creates this chemical called opium. And opium is what creates morphine, and fentanyl is created in a lab to mimic that. And the reason it's created in a lab is so that it can be more powerful than morphine. And so you kind of see there on that first bullet point, fentanyl is actually 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And I've seen some studies that show that you'll see here in a second that there's some types of fentanyl that are much more powerful than that. So opioids and fentanyl were created to manage pain. And to this day, fentanyl is still prescribed by doctors for pain management, specifically for cancer patients, right? Because there are some negative consequences of fentanyl, there are some side effects, and typically the pain gets so severe that the benefits of using fentanyl outweigh any of the risks. And so that's why a doctor can prescribe it, depending on the situation. Fentanyl is also, because it can treat so much of the pain, and it also gives off a very strong high, meaning it gives that very euphoric or happy feeling where you feel very elated. It can be very addictive. All right, and then on the next slide, I think we'll be able to show you the categories of how strong everything is, right? And so we just spoke about fentanyl, and on the right side, you'll see the lethal dose for each of those categories. So you've got regular fentanyl, which is typically what we're seeing on the street, sufentanil and carfentanil. And occasionally we are coming across carfentanil. So fentanyl is regular fentanyl is the most common. I don't want to rule that out, but carfentanil does show up. And here's the caveat: is regular fentanyl, 1 sesame seed, right, or a couple grains of salt is what's considered to be a lethal dose, right? And so even if it's in the air, if you were to inhale just a few grains of that, that's what could be a lethal dose to a regular person. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So now here's why fentanyl is starting to show up everywhere. And not even starting, right? We're a few years into this. And so first off, it's very cheap and easy to make. And I'm going to kind of break this down very quickly, but when I'm going to use the word precursors. Precursors means it's the ingredients. If I was going to make a cake, it would be the flour, the egg, stuff like that. And so if I wanted the precursors to make fentanyl, Well, China manufactures most of that. And so China is the capital of the precursors. The United States doesn't really have them. We've made those precursors illegal, and so is Mexico. However, Mexico, where the bulk of the fentanyl will come from, and I'm getting this information from the DEA, or the Drug Enforcement Agency, is the precursors will be sent to Mexico. The Mexican cartel will make it and will then sell it in the United States. And this isn't a new thing. They've used heroin and meth, and they've been selling to the United States those other drugs for decades. And so they already have labs set up and stuff like that. But $3,000 of precursors can be turned into $15 million. And so that is why the cartel has changed all of their focuses. It's a money game. So like you see in that very first bullet point, it's cheap and it's very easy to make. So before I mentioned poppy flowers, morphine comes from that, so does heroin. So heroin used to take 4 months to cultivate, grow. You had to hope that the weather was good. Then you had to take all this work to get it all extracted from the flowers. It was a lot. Now they can simply buy some ingredients, and it's just like making a cake. Like I said, so you put all the batter in, they've already got the labs, they can mix it all in, and now it's ready to sell. They spent less money, they have more time, and they make more money, right? So that's why, and now it's such an overproduction that the DEA estimates that Border Patrol catches maybe 3 to 5% of that. And they said that might be an overestimation. Basically, whatever fentanyl they want coming through is coming through because there's so much of it, they can't catch it. And so now we have such an oversupply that people are getting this. And what it does is fentanyl is stronger than heroin. It's stronger than these other drugs. So it gives a higher high, which means it's very addictive. And so what dealers are doing is they'll get a little bit of this fentanyl. Remember I said there's 2 grains of salt for a lethal dose for a regular person. Maybe they just want 1 grain of salt in that pill. Well, guess what? Now you're hooked on their pills. So you're going to keep coming back for more. You're going to keep wanting more and more because now you're hooked. It's very addictive. And so now they get lifelong customers. Dealers don't want to kill you because if they kill you, they get a bad rep. Please come looking for them. And they just lost money because they lost a customer. Their goal is to get you as hooked as fast and easy as possible. And so we're finding dealers that are putting this in every kind of drug, in cocaine, in meth, in opioids like Oxycontin, Oxycodone. It's showing up in Xanax. It's showing up in all of the club drugs. So when people used to go to raves and they take pills, well, those pills they typically will buy online. All of those online drugs are starting to show up with fentanyl in it because they're hooked. And that's what the dealers want. And so most people who are overdosing and dying from fentanyl may not even realize that they're taking fentanyl. And that's one of the other reasons is they haven't built up a tolerance for this drug if they don't know that they're taking it. And so that's one of the big issues that we're coming across. Next slide, please. All right, so fentanyl is the #1 killer of persons ages 18 to 45, right? And it's going up. So I think last year we had 108,000 overdoses, 109,000 overdoses in the United States. And as I mentioned before, it's unknowingly consumed. It's been fake pills of fentanyl have been found in all 50 states. And enough pills were found in the USA in 2021, which, like I said, that number went up to kill. Now, this is pills to kill every single person in the United States and Canada. All right, next slide, please. So here's where it gets a little crazy. Remember I told you there were so many pills that it could kill every person in Canada and the US. 6 out of 10, so 60% of those pills were lethal. And here's why, is those lethal doses, remember I told you it's like a cake or cookies, you're mixing that batter? Well, if you imagine making chocolate chip cookies, do all the chocolate chips end up even? The answer is no. So some cookies get more chocolate chips than others. Same thing with the pills. Some pills get a clump of fentanyl, others might not have any fentanyl at all. And so what we'll find is somebody might try 1 or 2 pills and they're like, oh, this stuff's great. and they'll share it with their friends. And if the whole party or whatever group is doing it, 6 out of 10 of those are going to overdose because the clump is bigger in that one pill. And there's no way to guarantee how much is there because they're not making sure that the specifics are in each pill. And so even if your dealer has good pills, as they'd say, without a lethal dose, there could be one pill in that batch, or there could be 60% of the pills in that batch that contain a lethal dose. But on average, it's about 60%. And I'm going to turn the time over because we actually have somebody who can speak a little bit more as to what we're seeing in Virginia.
So just to kind of hammer home what Mr. French is talking about here, we have some of the statistics from Virginia Beach over the last 2 years. And if we're looking at the time frame of January through October of 2022, we saw 251 overdoses, 45 which resulted in death. 14 of those were juveniles, and 4 of those resulted in death. Fast forward to the same time frame through 2023 in October, we have 292 overdoses, 75 have resulted in death. But the big number here that we're looking at is 40 of those are juveniles, 5 of which have resulted in death. You can go to the next slide.
And that's just like what we're seeing in our local community, right? Like that gets even bigger throughout the United States. And so these statistics are a little older, and that's because we're able to compare. Newer statistics are hard to come by because it takes them a long time to gather it up. But I want you guys to recognize that all of these numbers have gone up. Okay, so if you look at the orange, that's deaths in 2020. You'll notice that fentanyl killed as much people, or more people, I should say, than suicide and COVID-19 combined. And so when you're looking at those numbers, like that's a ridiculous amount that fentanyl is killing. And if you look at this, I told you that so it shows about 40,000 there. I told you we were over 100,000 just last year. And if that number continues if it doubles again, like it recently did, that would be enough to wipe out the entire city of Virginia Beach, or every city in the Hampton Roads but Virginia Beach. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and then this is just a summary of different services that we offer. I won't spend too much time on this, but we work in prevention services. We educate and we teach classes on any of these subjects that you can see there. And so if you're interested in that, please email us or feel free to reach out to us after this meeting. Thank you. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary of everything. Don't ever take random pills. Don't buy pills online. Don't take medications from anybody you don't know, or even anyone else you do know. If they're prescribed for that person, they're for that person. They're not for you. You want to take pills for the shortest time possible. So if you got them for a surgery and you don't feel the pain anymore, stop taking them. And then lastly, there's fentanyl test strips that can be shared. So if there is somebody who is going to continue to participate in that lifestyle, you can get free fentanyl test strips that'll let you know if fentanyl is in that pill or in whatever chemical you have, so that you can be safe. And then there's naloxone, which is a blocker or a overdose reversal, so to speak, where if somebody's overdosing on fentanyl or an opioid, naloxone can temporarily stop that overdose and give emergency services time to save their life. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Hey, so I just wanted to reintroduce myself as Sergeant Dan Fogarty. I am the representative for the Virginia Beach Police Department, and I currently work out of our narcotics division in special investigations. And I wanted to be able to arm the citizens and then you as parents with the abilities to be able to do a couple things. 2 of those being identifying fake pills that you may see that maybe if one of your children bring that home, and some of the ways they communicate with each other, and then maybe with somebody who they may be getting these things from. So when we're talking about identifying fake pills, it's important to understand where, or I guess how these pills are made on the pharmaceutical level, and then how the fake pills are made, because there's a very distinct difference. On the pharmaceutical side, large pharmaceutical companies and laboratories will generate, whether it's a fentanyl pill or even your ibuprofen and all these things, through a commercial laboratory with commercial pill presses that have very low tolerances, where they are able to reproduce the same pill over and over again with little to no nuance. The difference with the fake pills is that these pills are being pressed either by the cartel or even here in local cities by the actual drug dealer themselves. So one of the ways that you're able to identify these pills is because the presses that they're using are a lot more rudimentary and they don't have the same tolerances as a commercial press. If you are going to look at the pill themselves and you're looking at a pill that may be portraying itself as a Percocet or a Xanax, a lot of these pills will have rough edges where the press itself did not come together tight enough to create a smooth finish to it. It'll have a rough edge. A lot of times there'll be discoloring to the pills. So in order to make the pills identify as whatever the pill they're trying to make it look like, if they want to make it blue or green, they're using food coloring, and how they mix it each time is different. They're not using exact numbers, and so that discoloring is often very prevalent, and you can actually see that there's almost like a tie-dye look to the pill. It does not have the same prominent color that a regular pill would have. And then misaligned markings or the actual texture of it, because it's made through, as Mr. French was talking about, like a cake. They're adding these ingredients to the fentanyl, and it's different cutting agents, and each individual dealer may use a different type of cutting agent, but it'll actually create kind of a clay feel to it. So it's not going to have that same hard dexterity that a regular pill would have. So moving on to some of the methods of communication that you guys can look for when you're talking with your children and you're looking at phones and stuff like that. Obviously, they're going to use the standard social media stuff. So their Instagram pages and Facebook and Snapchat, but there's several other accounts that you guys can keep an eye out for on their phones to kind of be able to explore to see if they're actually communicating in some place that's a little bit different. One of those is Signal. And the following are all encrypted applications too. So they're a little bit more secure, harder to get into, harder for law enforcement to follow. So like I said, Signal is one of them. WhatsApp, Telegram is another one. That one's an international app. And as far as law enforcement goes, they don't respond to any subpoenas that we send. So we're not able to glean information from them the same way we do through, say, Facebook or Instagram. And then there's obviously also the dark web as well. There's a bunch of different browsers that they use. Things that you can look for is Onion browsers. It's called Tor. It's the Onion router. I2P, DuckDuckGo, and Kilos is another one that is very specific to dark web market purchases. And finally, something that's extremely important that I want everybody to be able to understand is the Good Samaritan law. And so what this refers to, and you can see the code there on your screen, is the arrest and prosecution when experienced or reporting overdoses. And where this is important is it's something that you need to impress upon if you have a child that you believe may be abusing some sort of substance, or maybe their friends are, about who can be prosecuted under the law here in Virginia. And so I'll give you kind of the 30,000 foot view of this. And what it says is that basically anybody who's on scene where an overdose is occurring that stays to provide aid, whether that be to actually give Narcan to that person or call 911. And then in addition, that they provide some level of cooperation while they're on scene. So giving their name, trying to give information about maybe what drug they took. All of those people that stay are immune from prosecution. So I can't stress this enough that we want to be able to tell these students that, hey, if their friend is overdosing, if they stay on scene and provide information to law enforcement about the drug they took and that they stay to give help, they are not going to be prosecuted by us. One of the important things to recognize for this too, that there is still people that can be prosecuted for this. So if we determine during the course of the investigation that a person distributing that narcotics is on scene, that person will be prosecuted. They are not immune the same way that if they provided information. So that's all I have. Next slide.
Good evening. I'm Casey Conger, coordinator for Health and PE, and I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the scope and sequence of drug awareness and drug abuse curriculum that we have in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. We have a very robust and rigorous curriculum that's aligned with our school board policy 6-29 that talks about drug abuse awareness in our schools. And we are aligned with the VDOE health standards that were released in 2020. And so I'm going to give a very brief overview. They are very comprehensive and complex. And so there's a lot to talk about, but briefly, it is very much age appropriate. And so the scope and sequence moves from in elementary school, where students in kindergarten and first grade are just made aware that medicines exist and that there's a difference between prescriptions and over-the-counter medicine, and that really it's an awareness that they should never take anything that isn't given to them by a trusted adult. And so we start with just an awareness at the kindergarten and first grade level. And then in second through fifth grade, we do move into the fact that there are drugs out there that can hurt them, but there are also drugs out there that help them. And sometimes they take medicine when they feel bad, but all medicines are given to them by a trusted adult, and that all drugs, legal or illegal, have an effect on their body. In middle school, we move more into what types of drugs. And in sixth grade, for instance, is the first time they really hear about opioids and fentanyl and that sort of thing. And so we take a deeper dive in middle school into the types of drugs, both legal and illegal, the effects of the drug use on their physical health and their mental health, how to understand that, how to identify it, how to identify the things around them, the media and marketing techniques that are used to draw them into these types of behaviors and situations. And then we also spend time working on making sure they understand resources that are at home, in school, in the community, for substance abuse disorders, for themselves, for their friends, for their families, and a comprehensive look into that, as well as mental health. In high school, the conversation moves now. In the state of Virginia, health and PE is required from kindergarten through 10th grade. And so this instruction goes throughout there. In elementary school, health instruction is provided by the elementary PE teacher in collaboration during PE time. And in 6th through 10th grade, it is done during PE course, but in a separate health lesson. And so in high school, they take a really deeper dive into drugs and really touch on alcohol use and how that affects them moving forward. And they talk about media and peer pressure, but in high school, the focus moves into how drug use and abuse can affect them in their future and affect them moving forward in their life. And so we go from the very basic in kindergarten all the way through how will this impact your driving, legal ramifications and consequences of drug use, and that behaviors that are associated with both drug use and mental health moving forward in their life. And so it is a very robust and rigorous curriculum. This is a very quick snapshot, but if you have any questions as to certain objectives at any grade level, feel free to reach out to the Department of Teaching and Learning. Thank you.
So, hey guys, I'm Sal Ortiz again, and just wanted to touch base. This is a lot of information to take in, and it's a lot to digest in an hour. So I strongly encourage you to listen to it again when it gets posted. I encourage just natural conversations about it, but I encourage you to really just kind of ask questions. It's scary in a lot of ways, but it's also necessary that we make this a regular part of our conversations, because this is what our real life is, and this is what our kids are going through. So for those who are on here tonight, I commend you for being on here. A couple of things before I touch on some of the resources that are available is that time is critical, because addiction isn't always kind of the old school kind of picture of what we look at as addiction back in the day. It's, irritability, headaches, a lot of digestive issues, those sort of things. And those things come on, especially with fentanyl and with opiates, within 3 days. And so I think that it's important to just pay attention. And I think it's important to reach out. It's better safe than sorry in terms of reaching out. Let us, as the clinical professionals, help you navigate that. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I work here in Virginia Beach at a private practice. And there's a lot of people that I know that are willing to help with that. But it's not left for you to try to sort out and figure out. Reach out, ask for help. and say, hey, help me navigate this and help me see kind of how to do this, because time is necessary. Time is sensitive, because you saw from the statistics that it just takes one time for something catastrophic to happen. So what do we have for resources? I want to be realistic and positive at the same time. There's not a lot. It's hard because when we're talking about minors, a lot of the resources that are available are for those 18 and up. And so when you think psych hospitals, when you think hospitalization or treatment programs, this side of Richmond, there's not a lot. I've been fortunate to be a part of a practice that provides a number of different resources, so that's what we're going to share. But I know that it will be frustrating for some parents. The other thing to really encourage is engage your kid in seeking out the resources, because at age 14 and up, they have to be involved and they have to be on board, which is often frustrating for parents, but it's also it could also be a way to join in the fight to kind of seek help and seek success. So at Meridian Psychotherapy Services, this is over in Town Center, near Town Center, Pembroke area in Virginia Beach. That I know of, they're one of the few that are doing this South Side. I know the city of Virginia Beach definitely has a lot of resources for child and youth services through Pembroke Services, and so I strongly encourage that. Because they do have trained clinicians that can help with some of the recovery resources. At Meridian, a few things to highlight here, and this is not all just for the kid. TARP is a program that they have for teenagers, 14 to 17 years old. And what we do there is it's set curriculum. So rather than an open discussion type of group that you would find in an adult setting, there's a set curriculum that I developed with some of the clinicians there and some of the peers that I work with. And we walk them through some of the real life sort of issues that they're facing with all types of addiction, from nicotine and alcohol and THC to fentanyl and some of the other ones. It's important that we talk about all the substances. So that's Mondays at 4 to 5:30, and that's insurance based. And so, feel free to call up there, ask about that. Again, I always expect that the kids are going to be on board. It's not that they're excited to come. Nobody's really excited to come and address this or to try to withdraw, but we could walk them through it and we make it engaging enough that it's not as torturous as they may think it is. The other thing to point out, I'm going to go to the other side of this slide here, is Lori, one of the med providers that they have over there at Meridian. The reason this is important is because with opiate addiction, there is a lot of what we call medication-assisted treatment in the community for adults. There's not a lot of providers that are doing that for minors. Very controversial, very challenging in a lot of ways. And I know that that's a hard discussion to have, but let's be real. I think that we're looking at a problem from a different angle, and we have to think some out of the box ways. Do I encourage medications for everybody? No. But I think that there's a way to be able to work with someone who is wrestling with addiction and some of the withdrawal symptoms. So the medications that they prescribe, Suboxone is one of the main ones, and some of the variants of Suboxone. Vivitrol is another one that they often prescribe. But the purpose of the medication is to take some of the edge off of the discomfort that comes from the withdrawal. Withdrawal it's not deadly, but it's horrible. And so they will tell you that I'm not going to put myself through that. You end up finding opiates and fentanyl more of a maintenance, what we call a maintenance type drug, because we don't use it for pleasure. We use it to keep from being in pain. And so whether it was originally used for pain, now that there's a withdrawal sort of pain effect to it, I got to keep going because I don't want to go through this. And so medication-assisted treatment is something that is worth discussing, especially for teenagers. We have great prescribers there, and I think that it's important to engage in the conversation with them. It's not for everyone, and it's, again, not something that I'm saying that everybody has to do. It's just an option, and I think what we need as parents here is options, because we often feel like we have no options. And so we have the treatment program, we have medications that can be worked with families, and then Safe Group there at Meridian is a unique group because this is for the family members of somebody working through recovery. And this is for adults or kids. Family members come, and what they have to recognize is that this is about them. This is their role in that individual's recovery or addiction. And they have to work on their part of it, because the truth is that not everybody's going to want to seek help when you want them to seek help, and not everybody's going to stick with it. And so we have to learn, how do we navigate that ourselves as family members, as loved ones. And so SAFE, Support and Family Encouragers, is a group that we provide once a month where we answer clinical questions from a clinical lens for family members. So we talk a lot about enabling behaviors. We talk a lot about codependency. We talk a lot about guilt and shame that comes oftentimes when talking about this. The truth is that there's a lot of shame that's surrounding this topic, and yet this is affecting everyone. Because if it's not your kid, it's your neighbor, it's in your neighborhood. This is our schools, and these are our families. And so Safe Group provides that opportunity. There is a cost for that group, but that group provides a lot of resources. In addition to that, and this is not at Meridian, but I encourage it, is Al-Anon, which is a 12-step AA-based program for family members. So AA and NA is definitely huge for adults, but Al-Anon, even if you have a kid that's going through it, again, is a good support for family members, because we have to learn how to navigate this. What I often tell my families is that don't try to make sense of the addiction brain. This is literally Alice in Wonderland. Because we're on here thinking, well, we just stop, or why would you start this in the first place? None of this is going to make sense. So this is not one of those things that you try to wrap your head around. It's just understanding that there's environments that can work with that get it. And you don't have to get it. You just have to know where to get the help. So those are 3 resources. If we can go to the next one, I'll show you a couple more that we can think about for resources. And some of these are free, and they're not necessarily substance related. But they're resources. I think that what we want to do is encourage conversation. So I'm gonna go to the far side of the screen here, and we have our Redefine group, and this is a peer-led group, and this is what we started. Life Change Institute reached out during COVID, right towards the end of COVID, and said, "Hey, I've got some teenagers that are using and need to be in recovery." And what parents were finding was they would drop their 15, 16-year-old off at an AA meeting or an NA meeting, and they've got some scared little 15-year-old that is pounced on by wolves that are in these rooms. And it's scary. I'm not saying that everybody's a wolf, but I'm saying that it's real easy to take advantage of a 15, 16-year-old in some of these adult rooms. And there was no peer-led teen meeting. And so AA and NA need to make that available again, but there is no peer-led teen meeting in all of Southside Hampton Roads. I don't even think on the peninsula as well, nor is there anything online. And so what we found was we needed to start something. So Life Change partnered up with Meridian and is making a peer-led group available to teenagers. So no adults allowed. We check IDs at the door, and we tell you you're gonna have to wait in the parking lot or wait in the lobby because this is just for your teenager. What we find is that teenagers need to be around teenagers to talk about real recovery stuff with people who've gone through recovery. And so it's peer-led. I have some peer recovery specialists that are working on being able to guide kids through this. And there's no adults. It's not led by me, and it's just a free space for kids to talk about being clean and getting clean and getting into this sort of recovery lifestyle. And so they need a freedom to do that. So that's a free service that's available, hosted at Meridian. It's not run by Meridian, it's run by Life Change, but it's hosted at Meridian. The other 2 free services here, Life Change Live is actually on now as we speak. They just wrapped up, but Life Change Institute puts out a monthly Instagram live post where they talk about mental health and substance use treatment. These are just general questions. And so what we find is that if our kids are using social media to access their substances, they could also use social media to access their recovery. So what I encourage as families is that we get on there together. Go on Instagram with your kid, get on something like Life Change's Instagram and follow these 2 young ladies as they talk about real mental health and substance use questions. They can field any questions in real time. And so part of what I tell people is to try to find a way to stump them, but they are licensed professionals, licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, and they answer questions for families and for individuals. It's not a replacement for therapy. It's not a replacement for treatment, but it's a support. And what we need is support in the day-to-day. And then the last part there, by that fine looking gentleman there on the side, I do got to point out, is what we just posted is talking about Wednesday Wisdom. And Wednesday Wisdom is just, again, affirmations that we can use, anybody can use. What we find is that there's a lot of guilt and shame with coming with substance use. So we need to encourage ourselves and we need to encourage each other. So every week, my Life Change team gets out there and we post a different affirming word. It's 1 minute. It's a 1-minute post about a positive way of thinking. And we encourage people to use this as a journal entry, use this as a daily reminder, refer to it often, share it. I've had I've had individuals tell me that they have their children that will send it to them every Wednesday morning when we post it. And it makes for family conversation. So when we often find that it's hard for us to talk at the family table, dinner table, or anywhere about issues like this, take a topic that's discussed in a Wednesday Wisdom or Life Change Live and say, hey, how does it impact you? How are you going to address this week? And what I encourage families to do is to do this together, not just put the responsibility on the kid, but let's all take on the responsibility. One of the things that happens in addiction and recovery is that we feel like we are the problem and we're the only ones that have to change. And the truth is the system has to change. The family system, the community system. We're not the only problem. We may be a major part of the problem. This is about our life or death, but everyone has to change, because if we change, then everything around us has to change. And so families often find that they need to be willing to talk about what are they willing to adjust as a result of the changes. And that makes it feel like we're all working together. And I think that's a huge need for anybody who's raising teenagers, anybody who's raising kids, let alone teenagers. They don't want to do it alone. So help them take out the trash and then listen to Wednesday Wisdom or Life Change Live. But these are just some resources in the community. Again, this is not all of it. There's not a lot of resources. I know the city of Virginia Beach has a lot of resources. I hope that we could talk through that. And if you can't find anything near you or you're having trouble accessing it, contact me. You'll see our number through all of this when it gets posted again later. Shoot us an email or something, but reach out to somebody on this panel, reach out to somebody around you and say, hey, I need help getting connected because this is critical and we got to stop losing our family members. Thank you.
All right, here are some references from the presentation. And if we can go on to the next screen, we're going to go into some questions. So thank you, Mr. Ortiz, and all of our presenters for sharing some critical information with our families this evening. We requested questions ahead of the presentation, and we had an incredible response. The answers to some of the questions were covered in the presentation, but we had a few that were outside the scope. So I'll read each question, and one of our presenters will answer. So let's get started. The first question is, what is the drug that's affecting kids the most in schools that's being abused? And I'm going to ask Sergeant Fogarty if he can take that question for us.
Yes, ma'am. So this can be a little bit of a tough question to adequately respond to. But when we're talking about what drug is most abused, we would start in the realm of marijuana. And we'll just touch on this briefly. So from the law enforcement perspective, marijuana, although decriminalized in Virginia, is still illegal for anybody under 21. So if you're under 21, you are not allowed to possess marijuana. That being said, marijuana, and I hate to use this term, tends to be somewhat of a gateway drug for adolescents into harder drugs. So once they start using marijuana, and we're talking about the next drug that they may use that may be more prevalent, is getting into these pills. And kind of what we're talking about today is it's easy to go from marijuana to a pill because that pill can appear to be benign because it's something they've taken before. They've taken pills all their life, and then now they don't realize that the pill they're taking is not the same pill that they've heard of when they were at the hospital or when they were at the doctor. So, and just to kind of arm you guys with some terms that you can look for, when we're talking about pills that you may see or may hear about them potentially taking, stuff like Perk 30s is something that you need to look for. If you hear the word bars or Xanny bars, they're talking about Xanax. But again, these are all not the same pills that were prescribed. These are the pressed pills that we're worried about.
Thank you, Sergeant Fogarty. The second question is actually a two-part question. Does every high school have quick, easy access to Narcan? Is it available to all teachers, or is it locked within the nurse's station? The second part of that question is, what happens if an overdose occurs at an after-school event when the nurse is not present? So I'm going to ask Mrs. Sawala and Sergeant Fogarty to take those two, it's really a two-part question.
Hi. So in August this year, Virginia Beach City Public Schools adopted the policy to have Narcan available at every middle and every high school. Each school's clinic staff and additional staff designated by their administration have been trained and are authorized to deliver the Narcan. These staff will follow the statewide standing order from the Virginia Department of Health Medical Director, which authorizes the individuals who have completed the training to dispense the Narcan to a person who is experiencing or about to experience a life-threatening opiate overdose. The Narcan is easily accessible from the clinic during the school hours and after hours. I think the next question was, what happens if the overdose occurs after school hours? So that's where the extra staff, the administrator, or the designee present for the after-school event has been trained and has access to this Narcan. In addition, I think the police officer also note that resource officers and all police officers do carry Narcan and are able to administer this.
So yes, that's correct. That's ultimately what I was going to chime in on. All of our patrol officers carry Narcan. Every school resource officer at each school should have Narcan with them. And then additionally, for after school events, if it's a sporting event, we often have police officers that are assigned there for part-time work. And again, each one of those in the patrol car, they would have Narcan as well.
Thank you both. Appreciate the answer. All right, so the next question was sort of covered, actually pretty in depth by Mr. Ortiz, but I'm hoping that Ms. Aliba can answer it from the city perspective. So what resources are in place for individuals that are engaged in substance use?
Thank you. So I believe that the number one resource that individuals can have is education. Education is key, right? We need to educate ourselves on the substances that are out there. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like every other week a new illegal drug pops up on the market. And just when you feel like you've learned about opioids, then fentanyl comes in, then, horse tranquilizer. I mean, there's just so much out there. And it behooves us to educate ourselves very well. And especially if we have kids, we want to make sure that we can have that conversation with them, with informed information, with research-based information. Because if we don't educate our kids, guess what? They're going to get the education somewhere. And it's usually not the best resources that you want, or the best form of education you want your kids to get. So we need to educate ourselves, know how the drugs is going to impact us, how it impacts our brain, how it impacts our ability to live, work, and enjoy life. And if that substance is going to impact us negatively, then we need to put things in place. So education, I think it's key. The second resource that I would say is engaging in preventive activities. And that's where prevention with the city comes in. So with the City of Virginia Beach, we have our prevention unit. And what we do is we provide research-based education, trainings, resources on health issues. And it could stem from mental health, suicide prevention, substance use, adverse childhood experiences, drug education like Nate had just done. And we provide it free of charge to Virginia Beach residents. So we encourage you guys to seek us out. Let us know if you are interested, and we can always provide you those information. And as a matter of fact, we have a very great, conference that we have coming up on marijuana. We all know that marijuana now is the big thing, right? But there's so much confusion when it comes to marijuana. Is it legal? Is it not? What's perception of harm? There's so much of it. So the city is coming up with this conference, and it has knowledgeable professionals that are going to be educating the public. It's free of charge. It's on November the 4th. Please come out if you can, right? We're going to have professionals talk about the legalities when it comes to marijuana, what's legal, what's not legal in the state of Virginia. We're going to have an addiction specialist. He's a doctor. And he's going to talk about how marijuana impacts the brain. Because for a lot of us, we feel like marijuana, it's not deadly, it's not dangerous, it's okay, but it does impact our brain. And when that impacts our brain, it affects our whole being, our ability to live, eat, enjoy life, and just live life to the best of our ability. So, and then we also have, a licensed therapist that would also provide us with tools, because sometimes the problem, but it's like, how do you engage your youth? How do you engage, your partners and other people? So this licensed therapist is going to give us the tools on how to engage, especially our youth, so that we empower them by giving them the information. So prevention activities is out there. We provide it free of charge, and we encourage you to seek us out. And when we post, events that we are hosting, come on out, because we have research-based information that we give out. So that's number 2. I would say another, resource to gather or to get with is online. It's from online. It has to be research-based, reputable online sites. You just don't go to no Joe Blow research online site to get some information on substances. SAMHSA is one great, online research place that you can get information, and that's Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And they have so much information on mental health, suicide prevention, and substance use. And as we all know, there's a correlation between substance use and mental illness, right? A lot of people that use medication, they're just using it to self-medicate because they're experiencing some mental health disorders. So why not put it together, right? Learn the signs, the risk factors, the triggers of mental health, as well as substance use, so that we're able to educate and empower not just ourselves, but our kids, So we have that as well. And then we also have support groups. We have a lot of support groups that kids can get involved in to build their confidence, and even adults. There are a lot of very positive, healthy support groups that we can engage in, to just empower us and make us great. So when it comes to resources, we have a lot out there, but prevention services with the City of Virginia Beach, we have so many great resources, and it's available to everyone with us in the city. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll freely train you, provide the services and the education that's needed to improve on your quality of health.
Thank you so much. Those are some amazing resources. Thanks for sharing that with us. So our next question is one we're probably all wondering, is where are the children getting these drugs? And I hope Sergeant Fogarty can address that one for us.
Yes, ma'am. So it's a relative obvious answer, at least for the first part of this. Where we're seeing these come from, at least for the students, is their peers. I know a lot of people have heard this many times, is you are who your friends are. And this is something important for the parents, is that you have to keep track of who their friends are, who their peers are, because that's where these are coming from, whether it's at a party or whether they're out one night. That's ultimately one of the main places they're doing this. And again, as we talked about earlier, through methods of communication, is on a grander scale. There are people that are getting it through the dark web. So this is why it's important that I can't stress this enough, that you're monitoring your children's social media, being able to monitor their computer use, what websites they're accessing, and actually knowing these things like the Onion browsers, these I2Ps, and these different websites that they may go on. It's no longer a good excuse to say that I'm not tech savvy. You have to become tech savvy in this world as a parent to be able to monitor these different applications that they're using to communicate.
Thank you so much. All right, our next question. Many of our children are vaping. What makes vaping so dangerous? And I think we've asked Mr. French if he could answer that one for us.
Yeah, so vaping can mean a lot of different things. First off, it could mean nicotine, right, which are your traditional vapes. It could be THC, which is marijuana. And then there's a whole other section of other chemicals, which could include things like fentanyl. And what this is like a double-edged sword as we talk about fentanyl. But the first thing was already kind of touched, was that, and I also don't like this term gateway, but vapes can also be kind of a gateway. And what the reason for that is, if I use a vape whenever I get stressed or anything like that, then I'm training my brain, I'm training my body to need a substance to cope and to handle my life whenever I get stressed or whenever I get upset. And during our teenage years, and below that is when we're learning how to manage our stress. We're learning how to cope. We're learning how to do positive things in our life. So if vaping is one of your primary coping skills, regardless of the substance, it's not too much of a stretch for when it no longer works because you built a tolerance, that you're going to try a different substance to cope. And so that can lead down to pathways where you might try other substances that could be laced with fentanyl or fentanyl itself. And there's also the occasional case, which are becoming more and more frequent, which is where fentanyl is also being found in vapes. And remember, these kids aren't legally allowed to have a vape. So many of them are bought through friends or bought online. And there is the occasional vape that could be laced from somebody else or from online, wherever it came from, with fentanyl. And so there were multiple deaths and multiple overdoses from teens last year in the United States because of that as well.
Oh, thanks for sharing that link between vaping and fentanyl. So our next question is, why are the pills unidentifiable? Wouldn't professionals be able to test them in a lab to tell what it is and what isn't in them? And Sergeant Fogarty, can you take that one for us, please?
Yes, ma'am. So this goes back to what we talked about in the original part of the presentation, that it's a little bit of a misnomer to call them fake pills or that they're unidentifiable. It's not a matter of that they're unidentifiable. It's a matter of that these pills are trying to represent themselves as a pill that we know to be a regular pill that's prescribed through, whether it's a hospital or your doctor. So like we said before, the pill presses on the pharmaceutical side, they are they have low tolerance. They're on the commercial end. They're able to create these pills, and those are the ones that are going out for mass production through the pharmaceutical companies. And they're not that, you know, they send out what they send, that they're testing their stuff, and they're actually producing pills of whether it's fentanyl or Percocet or Xanax, and those are traditional pills. The pills that our children are getting or may wind up getting is the pills that are coming from the cartel, from China, and then ultimately from local dealers here that are building these pills in a pseudo lab or even in their house. And it's not the same thing that is coming from an actual pharmaceutical lab or a traditional lab.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. All right. The next question is, how can I be a good role model and start a conversation with my child about the dangers of these drugs? And Mr. Ortiz, I hope you can take that for us.
Yeah, I love that question. So thank you. I think that's, you know, when I was gonna piggyback off of what Ms. Saliba said, that education comes from our kids. I have 2 teenagers at home, and they are quick to remind me of how corny and out of date I am. And they're quick to remind me of how they don't want to hear stories of the 1840s of when I was going through school at their age. So engage them in conversation. And I think that the conversation is, for us as adults, what we have to recognize is that we're not going to, number one, understand everything. So ask for explanation. Put your kid in the driver's seat of being able to educate you. They often feel in so many places, from schools, from home, that they are not the smart ones in the room. And so make them the smart ones, and let us be the ones that need to learn. So let them be the experts on it. And so that means that you allow them to speak to your point or to your level, whatever you guys agree on in your own home. You allow them to speak freely. Speak freely about some of the slang terms that they're using. Speak freely about how they see kids vaping in the bathroom, or how they get it into the school, or how they get away with it, because that's where we will learn. So I think that you provide the space. One of the things that I tell families all the time is that it's not a natural conversation. It's kind of hard to say, hey, pass the green beans, did you get high today? So you need to be intentional with the conversation, because it's not going to be natural. It's just like sex ed, in that you just have to kind of have the conversation. So you can schedule it, or you can just kind of make it a regular part of the conversation. The other part is keep it limited. We live in a TikTok world, so they're not going to pay attention for more than 1:32, and then they're on to the next video, or they're on to the next subject. So don't get frustrated when they don't want to talk for 3.5 hours about the root cause of substance use in teenagers. So 1.5 minutes may be a win. And also, I encourage, whenever you got them in the car, I always encourage having a captive audience. So you got the doors locked and you're rolling down the highway. You have a captive audience and you engage them in conversation. But part of the conversation is through music. And so part of what we encourage from a treatment standpoint is, again, out of the box. But I've had many conversations with kids playing songs back and forth. Let's be real. Like, I know that music today may be horrible for some of us, but some of what we were listening to growing up wasn't exactly the healthiest either. So maybe we have a conversation about what that looks like and how that's changed over the years. I tell families all the time, this is not your Cheech and Chong weed anymore. So let's talk about how it progressed over the years. Maybe a difficult conversation, but it may be a real conversation. The other part is to have an understanding, and this is for our adults, to be willing to be as vulnerable as they're willing to be with their kids. A lot of times what we hear our kids say is, well, you were doing it, or I heard you did it, or this was real big back when you were at Woodstock. And after you choke your kid about calling you so old, you kind of tell them, look, this is what the real truth is. And have a vulnerable conversation. Maybe it's some of us can do that. And if you can't, and that's fine. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that's how you start conversations. And I think that that's how you allow the freedom and the vulnerability of the conversations to happen. That's about as natural as it'll get. But nothing about this is natural because kids are dying. And so it's kind of hard to have a organic conversation about something like this if it's not your day-to-day norm. In my household, unfortunately, it is, because we do this all day, every day. But I work in this, I live in this. If you have teenagers, they work and live in this. And so I think that's natural enough. They're seeing it every day. So please don't be naive and think that they're not exposed to it, because I promise you that they are. So let's just have the conversation. Offer them something, offer them sweets or ice cream later. I promise you, ice cream works 9 out of 10 times. So make that the reward for having a 1.5-minute conversation.
Thanks, Mr. Ortiz. I was always a big fan of the captive audience in the car. So, but believe it or not, it works, right? All right, in 1.5 minutes, you're right. That's their attention span these days, right? All right, so our last question, what happens to students who are caught with substances, and what is the discipline procedure or process for students under the influence in school? So we conferred with our colleagues for an answer for this, and so I'm actually going to read that response. And the response comes from the Virginia Beach School Office of Student Leadership. So in both instances, an investigation is conducted that includes gathering statements from students and witnesses. Student searches may occur, and if any substances are found, they are confiscated and may involve the school resource officer for testing. So that could be a vape, THC, etc. Video footage may be reviewed when applicable, and students are sent to the school nurse for an impairment assessment. Our discipline guidelines will determine the level of discipline depending on the violations, incident details, and findings of the investigation and impairment assessment. So there's a range of discipline outcomes based on the violations, to include participation in the Substance Abuse Intervention Program, SAIP, long-term suspension, and/or expulsion. All right, so that was our final question. This concludes our Q&A and our presentation. I want to thank you all for taking time tonight to learn more about this important topic. I want to thank our presenters for sharing their knowledge. This presentation was recorded and will be available on the division's website at vvschools.com. Thanks so much and have a great evening.